It's something that can be quite tricky to measure because of the lack of data that's been coming out of Pyongyang. So we only have estimates of the size of the country's economy. The most consistent information we have is from South Korea's central bank. It uses figures compiled from government and intelligence agencies, including things like the size of paddy fields measured by satellite images to even the smoke coming out of chimneys. So if we take the measure that's given by the Korean Central Bank, which is gross national income per capita, we can see in North Korea it's around $1,300. That's just around 5% of the size of South Korea's economy and only about 2% of the size of the United States economy, by this measure at least. And that gives us an idea, I suppose, of where it sits in the world. It also tallies with the reports that we have from NGOs of widespread poverty in North Korea. However, the economy is growing in recent years. In 2016, which are the latest figures we have, the Bank of Korea says that growth hit 3.9%. That was the highest since 1999, and coming after several years of low or even negative growth preceding that, the main growth coming from agriculture and mining. Now, 2016 is the last year we have figures for, as I said. More sanctions have been imposed since then, and economists say they believe that growth is likely to have slowed down as a result. So what contributes to North Korea's economy? The biggest sector is primary industry, agriculture, forestry and fishing. That's around a fifth of GDP, closely followed by manufacturing, mainly focused on heavy manufacturing, less so around consumer goods. We also know that mining is a major industry because North Korea has huge natural resources, particularly when it comes to metals. Government spending, also a major part of the economy, perhaps unsurprising given the way the country is organised. Government services, the Bank of Korea says, making up about 22% of spending as well. Now, despite the sanctions in place, North Korea does manage to do some trade internationally, although, of course, it is extremely constrained. In 2016, imports and exports combined are estimated to have been worth about $6.5 billion. That's less than a tenth of its neighbour South Korea's trade. The trade it does is largely with China. 90% of North Korean exports went to China in 2016, tiny percentages too to India and Russia. Now, as for what the country exports, metals and coals that are mined there, as well as textiles, make up the main products that it sells abroad. Imports, though, include some basic products, really, for any economy: petroleum, refined oil, grain, because we know there have been, of course, food shortages in North Korea, and machinery as well, the things that it imports from abroad. Now, those international sanctions have had huge constraints on trade from North Korea. They ban things like imports or exports of coal or even fish. Over a decade, they've been expanded to punish Pyongyang for its nuclear program. Currently, the UN embargo involves a whole list of products they can't export. It also limits imports of petroleum and gas. North Korea is locked out of the international banking system. That means its nationals, that it can't, of course, transfer money to or from the country, or at least not through normal banking channels. And even its nationals are prohibited from working outside of North Korea. Now, these measures became even more painful in 2016, and that's because that's when China agreed to enforce a ban on buying North Korean coal exports. That's thought to have sliced trade dramatically. There's also a big grey economy that's built up over the years, with people finding their way around the sanctions. That's where we might explain, of course, some of the things that turn up on the streets of Pyongyang, luxury cars and the likes that have been spotted by reporters there. Now, if today's summit were to lead to a loosening of those embargoes, North Korea has room for economic growth. It has a large workforce, a largely cheap workforce that would be available for foreign investment. Natural resources, I mentioned them before: zinc, iron, huge resources of metals like that. But it also has neighbours that are ready to trade. Not only China, but the South in particular is ready for the opportunities that could be opened up by a loosening of sanctions. This is the industrial complex at Kaesong in North Korea. It used to be a joint North-South project, shut down in 2016, but a project that could be easily revived.